All right, so we're diving deep into communities today, especially how they work within businesses. And, we want to help you actually use these concepts.
Looking forward to it, especially finding the connections between all sorts of different communities.
Exactly. So we've got Robert Mitton's book, How to Build a Community in Your Business, to start us off. Plus, some real-world case studies. We'll look at tech giants like Atlassian, a co-living space called the Collective Old Oak, and even traditional kibbutz community.
Quite a range there.
Yeah. Let's start with Mitton's book. He's got this interesting idea of the community circle.
Right, it's like a model showing the core parts of a successful community. One of the most important is social capital, basically, how well people are connected. Mitten even suggests simple things like a potluck lunch can make a big difference in building trust.
I can see that. It breaks down the walls between departments. Imagine marketing folks hanging out with the engineers, everyone sharing food and stories.
Exactly. Those informal moments are so important for building relationships, which is the foundation of any community. And Mitten argues that the community is part of the business, not just an extra thing.
He's really emphasizing the company culture, too. He talks about power-focused, people-focused, task-focused, or role-focused cultures. But what happens when a company that's really hierarchical tries to force a community atmosphere on top of that? Wouldn't that cause problems?
Trying to just impose a community without thinking about how people already work together, for sure, that's going to cause pushback. A good example of doing this well is Jaguar back in the 90s. They had a lot of issues and realized their culture was a big part of it.
They actually got employees from all levels involved in defining shared values.
Yeah. Kind of like Mitten's idea of letting the community shape itself. Makes people feel more invested when they have a voice.
It reminds me of the kibbutz community, too, which is one of our case studies. They have this long history with both successes and struggles.
And quite a unique structure.
Right. What really fascinated me was how they went from just agriculture to embracing industry. Like they even have successful businesses like Effa Milk and the Effa Scooter that came out of their communal way of life.
It is remarkable. They took challenges like not having enough glue for their furniture and turned them into opportunities for something new. That spirit of working together to solve problems is really strong there.
That's such a good lesson, seeing limitations as a chance to create something new.
It shows how important it is to encourage people to experiment and share ideas, even celebrate that. Modern businesses can really learn from that.
It's interesting you see that in the rise of co-living spaces, too.
Absolutely. Places like the Collective Old Oak are responding to this need for connection, especially in cities where it's easy to feel isolated even when you're surrounded by people.
It's like what Mitton talks about, the loneliness epidemic.
Mhm.
These co-living spaces are going beyond just a place to live. They're designed for people to interact and support each other. The Collective Old Oak, especially, really focuses on social interaction and sharing skills.
And you've got the rise of remote work, blurring lines between work and home life. So even co-working spaces are becoming more community-focused now, not just a place to plug in your laptop.
Right. They're holding workshops, events, all sorts of things to build that feeling of belonging. And then there's the question of technology. It can be this amazing tool for connecting people, but it can also create barriers if it's not used in the right way.
The key is to use it to make the community stronger, not to try and replace real human connection.
We've got this example of an entrepreneur in Argentina who uses co-working networks like WeWork to connect with people all over the world. His community goes beyond just his city.
It's a great example of how technology can break down those geographical barriers and create a global community feeling.
But then you have the opposite. This large corporation tried to create its own internal social network, but it flopped because everyone was already using Facebook and other platforms. How do you actually use existing technology to build community, especially with remote teams?
You have to understand how people communicate differently. Some people are visual learners, some prefer audio, some are more hands-on. You need to adapt to those different styles.
It's like what Mitton says about needing flexibility in work arrangements. Companies that are slow to adapt to remote work or try to force everyone back to the office are going to struggle with building community spirit. It's about respecting individual preferences.
Exactly. It's about meeting people where they are and empowering them to participate in a way that feels natural.
It seems like encouraging that entrepreneurial spirit within a company, even if people aren't starting their own businesses, can be beneficial for everyone.
It's about fostering that mindset of problem solving and taking ownership, which makes the whole community more dynamic.
And with technology, it's clear that leadership plays a big role in guiding the online community. Just setting up a platform and expecting it to thrive on its own isn't going to work.
The leader sets the tone, encourages participation, and makes sure the technology enhances those human connections, not replaces them.
There's a great example of a bank that has daily online meetings to connect its employees globally. It really encourages creative thinking and builds that social capital, even though people are spread out geographically. But, not everyone's going to be excited about building community. Especially in traditional corporate settings, there's going to be resistance.
Resistance to change is natural. People and organizations get comfortable with the way things are.
I remember working with a director who just didn't trust people to work remotely. It created this culture of micromanaging that really stifled creativity. So how do you deal with that resistance from management? How do you get them on board with these initiatives?
It's helpful to think of it like pitching a business idea. Create a pitch deck that outlines the problem, the benefits of building community, some examples of where it's worked, and the direction you want to go. Framing it as an investment with clear benefits can help overcome that skepticism.
So basically, a data-driven argument showing the return on investment for these community building efforts.
Exactly. Data is key. Use both internal and external data to back up your pitch and show what positive outcomes are possible.
It reminds me of the GRO model in Mitton's book, Goal, Reality Options, and Way Forward.
Right. It's a framework for working through change collaboratively and strategically.
Defining the objectives, where you are now, the potential solutions, and the plan for moving forward.
And it's a continuous process. You need to keep evaluating and adapting. That's essential for community building.
And it's so important to include the community members in that process. Their input is invaluable for creating something that truly meets their needs.
Absolutely. Their perspective shapes the community.
I gave a keynote speech recently, and it was interesting how many people brought up this need for connection, especially freelancers and volunteers who work independently.
That's a common feeling. People want to feel like they're part of something bigger.
It seems like providing training and development opportunities can really build trust, especially for people outside the traditional workforce. It shows you're invested in their growth.
You're acknowledging their value, which creates loyalty and a shared sense of purpose.
But how do you create that sense of belonging and purpose for people who aren't full-time employees?
It's about recognizing their contributions, giving them opportunities to participate, and fostering a culture where everyone feels valued and respected. And it really emphasizes the importance of strategic thinking. You mentioned strategic thinking. It is crucial for navigating resistance, making plans for the future, and ensuring the community stays strong over time. It ties in with that imagine, look, use, move, interconnected, just do it model we talked about earlier.
It does sound very actionable and organized, a good way to tackle these challenges.
It encourages you to really visualize that ideal community, understand what's happening now, use what you have, make those changes, connect the different parts, adjust along the way, and then take action.
I like frameworks that lead to actually doing something, not just talking. So let's say we've done that groundwork, figured out the culture, gotten management on board. We're ready to actually start building this amazing community. Where do we even begin?
One of the most effective ways is to empower those informal leaders within a group.
Every group has them, right? Those people who just naturally inspire others and bring people together.
And they often pop up organically. They have a lot of influence, so recognizing and supporting them is really important.
It's like tapping into this energy that's already there instead of trying to force leadership from the top down.
Exactly. These individuals don't need official titles or anything. They lead by example because they genuinely care about the community and its purpose.
How do you even find these informal leaders? Do you just wait for them to show up?
Sometimes it's obvious, but you can be more proactive too. Look for the folks who are really engaged in conversations, sharing their thoughts, helping others, and creating a good vibe.
So once you've identified them, how do you actually empower them?
First, acknowledge their contributions and influence. Give them chances to take on more responsibility, like leading projects, mentoring others, or running discussions.
So basically, create opportunities for them to use their talents and make a real difference.
Precisely. And by doing that, you not only strengthen the community, but also cultivate potential future leaders for the whole business.
That's a great point. We've been talking about social capital, creativity, and a sharing economy. What are some other crucial pieces for building a thriving community?
One that often gets overlooked is storytelling. It's a really powerful way to create emotional connections, communicate values, and inspire people.
People connect with stories so much more than just facts or bullet points.
Absolutely. When people share their own personal stories, it creates empathy, a shared history, and reinforces the community's values.
But how do you encourage that in a business setting? It's not always easy to be vulnerable and share personal things, especially at work.
You need to create an environment where people feel safe and supported. Things like storytelling workshops, maybe even starting meetings with a personal story can help with that.
I like that, like a campfire setting where people can share without feeling judged.
Exactly. Psychological safety is so important. As those stories are shared, they become part of the community's identity, bringing people closer together.
It creates this sense of shared experience and solidarity, which is really powerful. So we've talked about empowering informal leaders and using storytelling. What are some other strategies for actually building that community?
Giving people a chance to contribute their unique talents and skills is huge.
That's a great point. It's about realizing that everyone has something to offer, even if it's not directly related to their job.
Right. When people feel valued for what they bring to the table, they're more likely to be engaged and invested in the community.
But how do you even uncover those hidden talents and skills?
It starts with being curious and asking questions. Really listen to what people are passionate about. You can also create platforms for people to showcase their skills, whether it's presentations, volunteer opportunities, or even just informal show and tells.
I love the idea of a company talent show. People can share their hidden musical abilities, art, anything really.
It really highlights the importance of celebrating the different things people bring to the community.
It's about appreciating the fact that everyone is multifaceted, not just defined by their job title.
And by giving them opportunities to contribute in different ways, you not only make the community stronger, but you also tap into this well of creativity that can benefit the whole business.
That's the ultimate goal, right? Creating a community that's good for both the individuals and the organization as a whole.
Exactly. It's about making personal and collective success go hand in hand. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the challenges of community building in a remote or hybrid work environment, something a lot of companies are facing.
It's a whole different ballgame, but the core ideas still apply. It's just about adapting them to this virtual world.
One of the biggest hurdles is replicating those spontaneous interactions that happen naturally in a traditional office.
Like those random water cooler chats, brainstorming sessions, or even just bumping into someone in the hallway and striking up a conversation. You lose that in a remote setting.
You do. Those little moments are really important for building relationships and a sense of community.
So how do you make up for that, knowing how important those informal connections are?
You have to be more intentional about it. Create opportunities for connection, virtual coffee breaks, online social gatherings, even just encouraging people to reach out for a quick chat.
So instead of relying on things to happen organically, you have to be more proactive and structured about facilitating those connections.
Exactly. And be mindful of time zones and different schedules when planning things. You don't want people to feel left out or like they have to choose between work and community.
Inclusivity is so important.
It is. Offer a variety of options to cater to different preferences. Some people love big virtual events, while others prefer smaller groups or one-on-one calls.
There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Right. Flexibility and adaptability are key. What works today might not work tomorrow. Be willing to experiment and adjust based on feedback.
It's about constantly evolving.
That's what keeps community building dynamic and interesting. You're always learning and growing along with the community.
It's an ongoing process, not a one-time project.
Exactly. It takes patience, persistence, and that genuine belief in the power of community to create something special.
Speaking of belief, not everyone's going to be on board with this whole community building thing, right? Some might see it as a distraction from work or just another management fad.
That's normal. Change can be unsettling, so some pushback is expected.
How do you address those concerns and convince the people who are hesitant?
Start by clearly explaining why building a community is important. How does it benefit the business? How does it make employees' lives better? How does it align with the company's values?
It's about showing that it's more than just socializing. It's strategic.
Exactly. Demonstrate the value it brings, like increased engagement, innovation, and ultimately better business outcomes.
Showcasing some real results can help too, right? Give concrete examples of how community building initiatives have actually made a difference.
Data is super helpful for that. Track metrics like employee engagement, productivity, customer satisfaction. Use those to show the impact of your efforts.
Prove that it's not just a feel-good thing, but something that actually delivers results.
It's an investment that pays off. A stronger community makes the entire business more resilient. We've covered communicating clearly, showcasing results, and tying it all back to the company's objectives. Anything else that helps overcome that resistance?
That's a good point.
One thing people often forget is to simply listen to those concerns. What are people afraid of? What are their objections?
Instead of dismissing them or forcing a change in perspective, actually hear them out.
Right. Empathetic listening can uncover the root cause of the resistance, which then helps you address it effectively.
Maybe it's just a misunderstanding or they haven't been given enough information.
Or a deeper concern about how it affects their workload, autonomy, or whether they still feel like they belong.
Once you understand those concerns, you can start to actually address them.
It might mean providing more information, reassuring them, or even tweaking those community plans to better fit their needs.
It's about finding that middle ground, keeping the vision for the community while also being sensitive to individual concerns.
Absolutely. It's a balancing act, but it's crucial for building an inclusive community where everyone feels supported.
I'm hearing a common thread here. Trust.
Trust is the foundation of any healthy community. It takes time and effort to build.
So how do you create trust in a business community, especially when people are working remotely or in a hybrid environment?
Transparency is key. Be upfront about the company's goals, challenges, and plans. Share information openly and encourage people to share their thoughts and feedback.
It's about creating an open environment where people feel informed and their voices are heard.
Consistency is also huge. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Follow through on your promises. Actions speak louder than words when it comes to building trust.
It shows you're reliable.
And don't be afraid to show some vulnerability. Share your own experiences, admit when you make mistakes, and ask for help when you need it.
Those are all qualities of a good leader in general.
They are. Trust is essential for any leader, no matter what level they're at. But it's especially important for those leading these community building efforts.
Without trust, it's almost impossible to get people on board and create that shared sense of purpose and belonging.
Trust is the glue that holds a community together.
I like that. It's what binds everything together.
And it's something you have to constantly work on. It doesn't just happen overnight.
Okay, so we've talked about transparency, consistency, vulnerability, and really listening to people's concerns. Are there any other practical things you can do to build trust in a business community?
One thing that can make a big difference is giving people the benefit of the doubt. Assume they have good intentions and are trying their best, even if they mess up sometimes.
It's about creating that environment where people feel safe to take risks and try new things without being afraid of punishment.
Everyone makes mistakes. It's part of how we learn and grow.
And when you show trust in others, they're more likely to trust you back.
It creates this positive cycle of trust and collaboration, which makes the whole community stronger.
It seems like everything we've been talking about really boils down to the importance of relationships.
It does. Communities are built on relationships, and those relationships need care and attention, both online and offline.
So how do you nurture strong relationships within a business, especially when people are remote or working in a hybrid model?
Create opportunities for people to connect beyond work tasks. Encourage virtual coffee breaks, online social events, even just casual conversations to get to know each other better.
It's about setting aside time for those informal interactions that help people bond and find common ground.
Exactly. Celebrate milestones and successes together, whether it's a team win, a personal accomplishment, or just something fun.
Those shared experiences really bring people closer.
They do. And recognize and appreciate individual contributions. Make sure people feel seen and valued for what they bring to the community.
Which is good management and leadership in general, right?
Right. Building relationships is essential for any leader. But it's especially important when you're trying to build a community.
Because those strong relationships are what make a community thrive.
They provide support, encouragement, and that sense of belonging that makes people feel connected and engaged.
Now, how do you actually measure if these community building efforts are working? It's great to have these aspirations, but proving they're making a difference is important too.
You're absolutely right. It's essential to track your progress and measure the impact.
So what are some of the key metrics to focus on?
Employee engagement is a big one. Are people feeling connected to the company and their colleagues? Are they actively participating? Do they feel like they belong and their work has meaning?
But how do you quantify something as intangible as engagement?
There are different tools and surveys you can use. You can also track participation in community events and gather feedback from employees.
So it's a mix of Quantitative and qualitative data, getting a well-rounded picture of how people are feeling.
Exactly. And tracking those metrics over time shows you whether things have improved since you started these initiatives.
So you have a baseline to compare against.
Right. And it's important to be open with the community about the data you're collecting and how you're using it.
It's not about judging or punishing people. It's about finding ways to make things better and celebrating what's working.
It's about empowering the community and helping it grow.
So employee engagement is crucial. What else should you be looking at?
Productivity. Are people more motivated and productive because they're part of a supportive community?
Measuring productivity can be tricky, especially when it's not just about how many widgets you make. How do you approach that?
It depends on the type of work. But you can look at things like output, efficiency, how many goals are being met, or even get feedback from employees and their managers.
The key is to choose metrics that make sense for that particular business and industry.
Absolutely. And it's not just about working harder. A good community encourages people to work smarter and collaborate more effectively.
It creates an environment where knowledge sharing and innovation can flourish.
Exactly. When people feel connected and supported, they're more likely to be creative, take risks, and come up with new ideas.
It's about creating a space where they feel empowered to try new things. And rewarding those who contribute to the community's success is key.
It is. It's not just about measuring. It's about celebrating accomplishments and acknowledging everyone's efforts.
It reinforces that feeling of belonging and shared purpose.
Exactly. Celebration is a crucial part of building a community.
It creates a positive feedback loop, motivating people to stay involved.
When people feel valued and appreciated, they're more likely to contribute even more. So we've talked about employee engagement and productivity. What other metrics are important?
You're right.
Customer satisfaction is another one. Are your customers having a better experience because of your company's focus on community?
How do you even measure that?
Look at things like customer feedback, reviews, repeat business, and referrals.
So you're gathering information from different sources to see how the community is affecting the customer experience.
Exactly. And then use that data to make things even better.
Okay, so we've covered employee engagement, productivity, and customer satisfaction. Anything else?
One that's becoming more and more important is social impact. Is the community making a positive contribution to the world beyond just the company itself?
That ties into the idea of businesses being more purpose-driven and socially responsible.
It does. And it's something both employees and customers care about.
How do you measure something like social impact?
It depends on the community's specific goals. You might look at volunteer hours, charitable donations, sustainability efforts, or even just how many people's lives are being touched by the community's work.
So you're quantifying those positive contributions.
Absolutely. And celebrating them to inspire even more action.
It's not just about measuring, it's about using that information to tell a powerful story about what the community stands for and how it's making a difference.
And that story can attract talent, engage customers, and build a strong reputation.
It creates this cycle where the community's success benefits everyone, including the world outside the company.
Exactly. That's what makes community building so rewarding and impactful. You're creating something bigger than yourself, something that makes a real difference.
We've covered a lot in this conversation. We talked about trust, relationships, measuring success, and the challenges of building a community in a remote or hybrid environment.
We did, and I think the main takeaway is that it's about so much more than just tactics and strategies.
It's about creating a culture of connection, collaboration, and shared purpose.
Exactly. It's a journey that requires dedication, creativity, and a real belief in the power of community.
I like that. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Just a reminder that communities aren't static, they're constantly changing. You need to adapt, experiment, and learn alongside the community as it evolves.
It's about embracing that evolution and allowing the community to find its own way. Okay, so for this last part, let's look at some companies that are doing this community thing really well. I think it helps to see these ideas in action.
Definitely. It's one thing to talk about the theory, but seeing real-world examples makes it much more concrete. Let's start with something we haven't touched on yet, the open source concept in the tech world.
Oh, that's interesting. Where software development becomes this collaborative effort, often with people from all over the world contributing to a project.
It's a great example of the community spirit we've been talking about. Think about Linux, the operating system. It was built by this global network of developers, all sharing their knowledge freely.
So instead of one company controlling everything, it's this collective effort with lots of different perspectives and skills coming together.
And it leads to some amazing innovation. What's fascinating is this open source model isn't limited to software. You see it in scientific research, product design, all sorts of fields.
It shows how this collaborative approach is spreading, this idea of transparency and working together to solve problems.
Right. Now, switching gears a bit, let's talk about online education platforms like Coursera or ADX.
I've taken some courses on those. They offer classes from top universities all over the world, which is pretty amazing.
What's really cool is how they build community among the learners. They have forums, discussion boards, even peer feedback, so it's not just passively watching videos.
You're actually interacting with other people who are learning the same things.
Exactly. It creates this support system where people can share ideas, ask questions, and motivate each other, like those social capital elements we talked about. It's community-driven learning in action.
They're taking education outside the traditional classroom and making it a global experience.
It shows how powerful technology can be when it's used to connect people in meaningful ways. Okay, another interesting example is crowdfunding platforms like Kickstarter or Indiegogo.
Where people can pool their money and support projects they believe in, becoming part of making those projects happen.
Creators can share their ideas, and passionate individuals can get behind them. It fosters this sense of ownership and collective achievement. It's not about relying on big investors anymore. It's about empowering individuals to drive innovation.
And it creates a direct connection between creators and their supporters, which can build a really loyal community.
It's all about tapping into that collective enthusiasm to make something happen. It really embodies Mitton's idea of the sharing economy, where people share resources and skills for mutual benefit. Platforms like Airbnb and TaskRabbit are good examples of that.
Where people can use what they already have, like a spare room or special skills, to create value for others and earn income. It's a win-win.
It challenges those traditional ways of thinking about ownership and consumption. It's more sustainable and collaborative.
These are all such great examples of how different industries are incorporating community into their core.
It really shows that this isn't just a fad. It's a fundamental shift in how we think about business, work, and even how we interact with each other on a daily basis.
So for our listener who's ready to get started with building community, what advice would you give them?
Start small, experiment, and be patient. Building a strong community takes time. You need to be consistent, adaptable, and believe in the power of connection to make a difference.
Great advice. Don't try to do everything at once. And don't be afraid to learn from others who are doing it well. Adapt what works for them to your own situation.
Observe, learn, and adjust as you go. Communities are always evolving, so embrace that change and let the community help shape its own direction.
And remember, your biggest asset is the people in your community. Their talents, passions, and ideas are what make it unique.
Nurture those connections and let that collective energy flourish. Good luck on your community building journey.
And until next time, happy community building.